Hey, thanks for clicking on the video. This week, we got a lot of weapon changes detailed. And before you click off the video, because you've already watched Aztecross cover the blog post, this video is not going over all of the changes. This video is going over the most important changes and how they're going to affect how we play. Especially how we play inside of the end game and inside of things like contest mode raids, which we're getting one in about 2 weeks. And in the last section of the video, I actually talked about an exotic which in a wacky way is looking to join the GM meta. So looking at the blog post, there were 3 main things that I believe are actually worth considering as we go into next season. There are a lot of weapon specific changes, like Touch of Malice getting huge buffs and Vex Mythic class also getting a pretty sizable damage buff, but in this video, we're just going to stick to holistic gameplay changes, or the changes that are actually going to alter how we enter certain scenarios within the game. Whether that's DPS setups, GMs in a fire team, solo lost sectors and dungeons, the things affecting those, that's what we're going to talk about. And if you want to hear a specific thing, you can look down below and see the chapters. Also, while you're down there, if you like my stuff, make sure to subscribe. As a new season is only 2 weeks away, I'm going to be uploading a lot more, and I think you'll be interested in what I cover, as well as the builds I make starting next season. So first up, and arguably the most important change, is some really impactful rocket perks are getting altered. Chill Clip no longer works with Galley, and hardly works with legendary rockets anymore. Directly from the blog post, in the words of Bungie, they have reduced the slow stacks from 60 to 40, and Wolfpack rounds no longer triggers this perk. So for all those clips of an enemy freezing and shattering a million times a second, well, those are gone. And then to just get the base extra damage from shatter, you now need to shoot 3 rockets instead of 2. So yeah, this is a pretty big L for Chill Clip. And honestly, I don't see any teams making use of this in the future, because now there's practically no point to rock Chill Clip on your rocket. Also, while I'm talking about Chill Clip, to freeze anything, you need to hit them 3 times. So, as for the most common source of Chill Clip, fusion rifles, rapid fire fusions are 100% the king now. So, make sure you get a Godroll Riptide, because rest in peace, Deliverance.
I don't want to play with you anymore.
But outside of Chill Clip getting nerfed, we're now moving into buff territory. And the buffs are going to start with Bipod, which was a very underwhelming perk when it first launched. And the change coming to Bipod is that the damage penalty is being reduced to 25% instead of 40%. Now, given the whole ecosystem of rockets and rocket perks that allow you to have multiple rockets inside of a magazine or tube, and damage perks that do and don't work with Galley, I'm not smart enough to know how this is really going to pan out when it comes to DPS calculations. So I'm just going to patiently be waiting for someone with a brain to do that for me. And this is one situation where I'd love to hear what you think down in the comments below, because like I said, I don't really know how this is going to pan out when we have it in our hands. Moving on to the last change coming to a big rocket perk, we have Envious Assassin. When this perk was introduced, it was a little wacky, because it had a lot of stipulations attached to it, and activating it just wasn't that simple. So when comparing it to a perk like Reconstruction, it just lost out, and honestly, it probably still does, because autoloading is broken. But now, with the changes coming to Envious Assassin, anyone rocking that Cold Comfort Godroll can maximize the Envious Assassin benefit much easier. No longer will the ammo count lock for the first time you pull out your rocket, and also there's no longer a time limit between kills. So to properly use this perk, you just slay out and pull out your rocket every now and then. And outside of those perks, that's it for rockets. I'm really interested to see how all of this is going to affect the meta, and like I said earlier, I'll be patiently waiting for that info. Moving on to the next big change, which I'd say is kind of going under the radar for most people, is hand cannons are getting increased a lot. These changes are pretty wild, with them getting a 20% damage buff to minors, as well as a 75% damage buff to majors. That's almost dealing double damage to anything with an orange health bar. This damage increases even more on exotic hand cannons, like Malfeasance, so this is definitely going to be something you want to keep an eye out for. Bungie said they'd never want hand cannons one-shotting red bars and GMs, but feel like we're getting pretty close to that. So it doesn't really take a whole lot of brain power to see this is just a really good change, and it's gonna make them much nicer to use inside of the endgame. Oh, also, Warden's Law is back with a new 2-round burst archetype. And for the final big change, we have the sword rework. There is a massive host of changes, but we just want to know if they're going to be meta, or at least usable inside of the endgame again. First up, energy is going to recharge faster. Full damage heavy attacks can be done at any % of charge, so we no longer have to wait for that whole bar to be full. Then guard resistance is being brought in line with glaives by granting you, on the low end, 82.5% damage reduction up to 95% damage reduction, as well as no longer losing energy when you're hit while guarding. So there's a lot more text than what I just said, but that's pretty much what it boils down to. But is this gonna make them meta? Maybe? Being able to actually guard with your sword and then use your heavy for max damage is nice, but you still have to drop your guard to do the attack. And inside of stuff like GMs, I'm not that sure you're gonna one-shot whatever you're trying to kill. And since there was no increase to sword damage, I'm not so sure this is gonna turn swords into the GM player's go-to heavy. However, this is where things get pretty big. There are 2 weapons that I want to bring up. The first one being Lament. Lament is already pretty good. It's not the meta. It was at one point, but right now it's just a good sword. But swords aren't in a great place. But with that being said, next season, you're going to be able to use Lament with around a 90% damage reduction. And when you do drop that guard to do your attack, Lament self-heals you. So if there's any weapon poised to actually benefit from this and ingrain itself inside of my loadout and your loadout, it's Lament. And for that, I'm genuinely pretty excited to try it out. I should, however, add at the end here, the recharge rate and the way that you use Lament isn't actually changing, it's just Lament is benefiting from the damage reduction. The next weapon I wanted to talk about is Crown Splitter. I don't often play Titan, but I've seen what it can do in the past, and given that all it needs is one juicy heavy attack to deal big damage, I expect Crown Splitter and also Stronghold to make some waves within the community as well when this update goes live. And those are the big changes that I think are worth considering, especially just for the start of the next season and the new raid race. Let me know down in the comments if you think there's something that I missed, and thank you so much for watching. If you'd like to support me and support this channel, a like, a subscription, and a comment is greatly appreciated. Helps my videos get out to the algorithm. And if you want to support me, but you can't think of a comment down below, Season 22. And with that, as always, I hope you're having a great day, and I hope to see you around.